Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Colton, and in today's video, I want to talk about cutting out the noise in your creative work, and specifically for me in photography. Noise can really be anything, and this kind of goes along the same lines of mental health in your creative endeavors, or in this case, in photography. But I want to talk about what is creative noise and maybe how can you cut that creative noise out so that you can get back to doing your work. Because ultimately, to me, that's what creative noise is. It's things that you're hearing, that you're experiencing, that are preventing you then from doing the work and putting in the time to create ultimately. So I'll talk about this in the scope of photography, being that I am a photographer, but really this could apply to filmmaking, creative writing, ceramics, anything creative. There is oftentimes noise that might be impacting your creativity. So what is creative noise? Could be really anything. A couple examples. It could be gear related. You could be seeing all this new gear that's coming out that's really great, and it starts to make you feel like the gear that you have is not enough. And so much so that you really can't do anything good and you can't produce any good work until you get that better gear. So either then you're not doing the work, waiting for some point where you can get that gear, or you're way overspending on stuff that you really don't need, so that you can feel like you're able to start doing the work. And ultimately, if you do that, you'll only feel like you need to spend even more the next time camera gear or whatever gear it is comes out. If you're a creative writer, it could be a laptop that you don't have. Oh, I just need a MacBook. Otherwise, I can't really be a creative writer. Wrong. Oh, I need this brand new Canon camera. Otherwise, I can't be a great photographer. Wrong. So, it could be something related to gear. It could be creative space, seeing someone else's studio space or their creative space that they've built out and feeling like, well, until I create a space of my own like that, I just won't be effective in what I'm trying to do. And so I need to prioritize building out that creative space first, and then I can be creative. Again, that's just noise. You can be creative right now in less ideal conditions and still start putting in the work. It could be feedback that you're getting from people. Feedback can be so critical and can be so helpful, but it can also end up being creative noise. Not everyone who gives you feedback is giving you good feedback. Even if they seem like they really know what they're doing and they have their stuff together. Maybe an example is you're going down a path that few people have gone down, and you're on your way to creating something really special and really unique, but people don't see your final vision. You might not even see your final vision yet. And so because of that, they don't understand what you're doing. And they just see it as different. And, you should really go down this other path. This is the time-tested path, right? And you should do this because that's what everyone else who's been successful has done. And so now they're putting you into a box where either you just don't go down this path at all, or not to the extent that you should, or you start going down a path that you're not really passionate about. And so then that kind of serves as a limiting factor because you're just not all that interested in doing the work that you're not passionate about doing in the first place because you're on the wrong path, right? So it could be feedback. It could be criticism, which is overly harsh and which is really an opinion being presented to you as a fact that could detract you from putting in the work. So these are really just a few examples of creative noise that you might experience. And honestly, I would encourage you guys, there's so much other things that could serve as creative noise that are not being mentioned because we just don't have the time to do it. But drop those in the comments below. If you've experienced something that has served as noise to you, it's not about engagement. It's about the fact that people watching this video are probably experiencing something like this, and they might see your comment and say, oh, I've experienced that. And now that's confirmation to them that, hey, I'm not alone. Here's someone else who's experienced the same thing. And maybe even here's what they did to overcome that. And now I have something I can try out on my own to see if I have a way to cut that noise out now. So share that if you feel comfortable doing so, if you've experienced something different than what we talk about in this video. But for this video, I'll kind of give an example of something that has been creative noise to me. So this will be photography based, but I think this can kind of apply as a good example of noise and how to maybe start cutting that noise out. So for me, I really wanted to get into doing some still life photography, but I was seeing other still life photographers, mainly on things like YouTube or Instagram, where they had all this great gear, a lot of full frame, high resolution cameras, a lot of medium format cameras. And not only that, but they had complex lighting setups. Oftentimes they had dedicated studios where all this gear is set up, and also all this skill in having built out a huge portfolio of some still life work. And so they're very knowledgeable about what they're doing. And I really didn't have any of that. I didn't have great cameras. I didn't have any kind of studio space, and I had zero skill in shooting still life photography. And so for a short time, that kind of served as creative noise that was holding me back from doing the work, because I felt like, well, first I need to get the right camera and lens. I also need to buy up a bunch of studio lights. I need to find some space to rent out so I can shoot all this. And I need to do all this research about how to shoot it. Otherwise, I'm just going to waste my time and I'm going to produce bad stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that held me back from doing anything at all, until I realized that none of these people just woke up one day, said, oh, I want to start shooting whatever subject I'm going to shoot, and then just bought all the gear, bought all the lighting, rented a studio space, suddenly just knew how to do everything, and started from 100. They likely worked their way up. They had sort of a ramp up period. They started with just a kit lens and a kit camera, right? And maybe eventually started to get some lights, started to get some backdrops, maybe started renting studio space by the hour at some point, or borrowed studio space, and eventually over time worked their way up to the conditions that they have now that I'm seeing in their video. And so similarly, I just need to get started. I just need to start shooting and trust that the more I shoot, the better these images will get, and the more that I will grow over time, both in my skill, but also in the equipment that I have. And so at the time, I kind of went the opposite direction. Instead of using a full frame or some high resolution camera, I used an Olympus E300, which is a 20-year-old camera, 8 megapixels, fairly small sensor compared to full frame or medium format. And I used that camera because, one, I had it, but also I knew I could get a macro lens dirt cheap for this camera to start shooting. And so I picked up like a $30, $40 macro lens for that camera. All in all, probably $60 for the camera and for the lens, dirt cheap. And then I had a very cheap flash, which actually I still use to this day, but I didn't have any accessories for it. So I was just shooting flash direct onto the subject, no diffusing, no nothing. And I had a little LED light panel that was really weak, but that I used for the ability to focus and see the subject before shooting the flash. And so then that was really all the gear I had. So instead of going out and buying a bunch of backdrops and all this other stuff, I just went to the hobby store, picked up a stack of 8x10 construction paper in a variety of colors, and went to the grocery store, picked up 2 bags of gummy bears, $1.50 each. So probably less than $10 for all of the construction paper and all of the candy. And then I came back and I set up what I had and I started shooting. And in that first shoot, this image was achieved. And this is an image that I still would consider top 5 for me in this series. Even a year and a half into this series, this is still one of the best photos, one of my favorite photos, and one which will be in the gallery showing, one that is in the photo zine. So it kind of went to show that even in that first initial shoot, when I had barely any gear, probably, at most $200 combined of all the lights, all of the camera gear, all of the paper and the subject, everything together, probably less than $200. And yet I produced an image that I still consider one of my favorites to this day, even though now I have a medium format camera, I have a little bit better lighting, I have backdrops, and I have a little bit better setup. It's still one of my favorites. So had I allowed that noise to get in the way, I might not have achieved that photo. I might not have ever started. And instead, I started and allowed my equipment to grow as my skill grew. And that sort of served as the method by which I was able to cut that noise down. So that's just one example. And I would encourage you all to take a moment to sit down and kind of think about, well, for me, or rather for you, what is serving as creative noise in your photography or in whatever creative endeavor you're involved in? And maybe there's more than one thing serving as creative noise. And then start to brainstorm, well, what are some things that I can do to cut out that creative noise so that I can really either get started doing the creative stuff I want to do, or so that I can maximize my efforts that I'm doing in any kind of creative endeavor, and I'm not being limited by this noise. So I would really encourage you to consider that. And if you have some thoughts on that, do share them below, because again, that could be really helpful to other people who are going through similar situation. So that is the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this from me, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and that'll keep you in the know for when the next video drops. But for now, I'm Colton. I'll see you in the next one.